I typed 2 words and hit send, 9 in the morning, right when the board was meeting. By 10:03, he'd vanished from the org chart. The whole office still thought I was the calm one, the pushover. They were wrong. I was just waiting for the right moment. My name is Melanie Grant, 43 years old, senior data analyst, 15 years at Catalytic Systems, until 7:47 this morning, when 5 words erased everything. The email arrived while I was reviewing quarterly projections. Steam still rising from my 3rd coffee. No warning, no meeting, no conversation, just Derek Sloan's name in my inbox, and those 5 words that corporate America has perfected into an art form of cruelty. We're making you redundant. Redundant, like I was a spare printer cartridge gathering dust in supply storage. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. No explanation beyond organizational restructuring. No acknowledgement of the systems I'd built, the crises I'd navigated, the weekends I'd sacrificed. 15 years compressed into a PDF attachment outlining my severance terms. Derek Sloan, 6 months in the company, 3 months as my boss, Harvard MBA, crisp shirts, firm handshake, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to prove competence. He'd swept into our department like he was doing us a favor, spouting buzzwords about optimization and synergy while systematically dismantling everything that actually worked. I sat there, cursor blinking in the reply field. What do you say to your professional obituary? Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to future endeavors. The corporate script we're all supposed to follow, maintaining dignity while they escort us out like criminals. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I'd imagined this moment before. Who hasn't? And always pictured myself crying or raging or immediately calling my son. Instead, there was just nothing. A hollowness where panic should have lived. The office hummed around me, oblivious. Karen from accounting discussing her weekend plans. The printer jamming for the 3rd time this week. Someone microwaving fish in the break room. Life continuing while mine had just stopped. I closed the email, opened my personal files. 15 years of work stared back at me. Dashboards, reports, analyses that had saved this company millions. Derek had presented my latest efficiency model to the board just last week, accepting their praise like he'd birthed the numbers himself. That's when it hit me. Not sadness, not fear, something colder, sharper. The kind of clarity that comes when you realize you've been playing by rules that were designed for you to lose. I didn't love this job, hadn't for years, but I'd stayed because that's what you do. You stay for the health insurance, for the mortgage payments, for the college fund. You stay because starting over at 43 is terrifying. You stay because they count on you staying. Derek was counting on me leaving quietly, following the script, maintaining professional decorum while he slotted someone cheaper, younger, more pliable into my position. Someone who wouldn't question his numbers or challenge his assumptions. Someone who wouldn't know what I knew. The hollowness filled with something else, not rage exactly, something more precise, more useful. I pulled up my shadow system, the real numbers, the actual data, the truth Derek had been so careful to bury under his polished presentations, financial irregularities I'd flagged and been told to ignore, vendor relationships that didn't quite add up, performance metrics massaged until they sang the song leadership wanted to hear. 7:47 a.m., the timestamp burned into my retina, the moment they decided I was expendable. They had no idea what they'd just made possible. The divorce papers were signed 3 years ago, on a Tuesday. I remember because I went straight from the lawyer's office to my desk and worked until 2 in the morning. Work became my anchor, my identity, my excuse for not dealing with the wreckage. Numbers don't lie. They don't make promises they can't keep or pretend to love you while texting someone else. They're predictable, controllable, honest. I threw myself into them like a woman possessed, building reporting systems that went far beyond my job description, unofficial channels that tracked what really happened versus what leadership wanted to believe happened. Derek inherited me like outdated office furniture. From day one, he made it clear I was an inconvenience, too experienced to manipulate, too knowledgeable to bullshit, but also too useful to discard. At first, "Melanie, fantastic work on the customer retention analysis," he'd say in meetings, my slides glowing behind him, never mentioning who'd spent 3 weeks correlating data points. never acknowledging the M. Grant watermark I'd started embedding in the metadata after the second stolen presentation. I stayed. God help me. I stayed. My son needed stability. The mortgage didn't care about my pride. Starting over meant explaining gaps, selling myself to recruiters half my age, pretending enthusiasm for company culture and growth opportunities. So I swallowed it. Every dismissive email, every credit stolen, every meeting where my ideas became his insights. But I'm not stupid. Survival in corporate America requires insurance. That's when I created Shadow Vault. Not all at once. That would have been suspicious. Piece by piece, query by query. I built a parallel system. Every report Derek touched, I kept an original. Every number he adjusted, I preserved the source. Every questionable decision, documented and cross-referenced. It started as protection, evidence in case he tried to blame me for his failures. But as months passed, patterns emerged that made my stomach turn. Vendors appearing overnight with suspiciously high contracts, budget allocations that vanished into vague operational expenses, performance metrics that shifted just enough to trigger bonuses. "You're too detail-oriented," Derek told me once, smiling like it was a compliment and criticism wrapped in one. "Sometimes you need to see the bigger picture." The bigger picture, like his cousin's consulting firm suddenly winning a $2 million contract, like departmental savings mysteriously disappearing into projects that existed only on paper, like the way our actual performance metrics never quite matched what reached the board. I documented everything, not because I planned to use it, I'm not that calculating, but because that's what you do when you're a single mother with a mortgage and a boss who treats ethics like suggestions. You protect yourself. You create leverage. You build your own safety net because no one else will. The Friday before he fired me, Derek asked for my system passwords. "For continuity planning," he said. I gave him access to the official dashboards, the sanitized versions that showed what he wanted to see. Shadow Vault remained mine, hidden behind authentication layers that I didn't even know existed. Trust but verify, my grandmother used to say. Except in corporate America, you skip the trust part. 3 months of watching him take credit for my work. 3 months of fixing his mistakes while he golfed with board members. 3 months of pretending I didn't see what was happening, didn't notice the patterns, didn't understand the implications. And now, with 5 words in an email, he'd freed me from pretending. The thing about being redundant is that it means you're no longer part of the system, no longer bound by its rules, its hierarchies, its careful politics. When you have nothing left to lose, truth becomes a weapon you're finally free to use. I pulled up Shadow Vault one more time, watching real numbers flow across my screen. 2 years of data, 2 years of evidence, 2 years of Derek Sloan believing he was too smart to get caught. He was wrong about me being redundant. I was the most essential person in his professionally crafted house of cards. He just didn't know it yet. 8:02 in the morning, 15 minutes since the email. I should have been packing my desk, calling HR, beginning the humiliating ritual of corporate expulsion. Instead, I was pulling financial records that would end Derek Sloan. The Q2 report he'd presented last week, I had both versions, the one the board saw, with its healthy margins and aggressive growth projections, and the real one, showing cost overruns, missed targets, and a hemorrhaging project Derek had somehow transformed into a success story. My fingers moved across the keyboard with surgical precision. Screenshot. Save, document, verify. 2 years of watching him operate had taught me his patterns. He was clever. I'd give him that. Never changing numbers dramatically enough to trigger automatic audits. Always keeping adjustments just within the realm of plausibility. But I knew where to look. The Hartman vendor contract, supposedly a new IT infrastructure provider, except Hartman LLC had been incorporated just 2 weeks before winning a $300,000 contract. The registered address. A residential property owned by Derek's brother-in-law. The deliverables. Vague enough to mean anything, specific enough to pass casual inspection. Then there was the marketing budget reallocation. $40,000 moved from digital campaigns to strategic consulting services. The consultant, a firm that had billed exactly $40,000 for a report that was essentially a reworded version of my analysis from 6 months ago. Each thread I pulled revealed another. The employee satisfaction survey that never happened but somehow cost $15,000. The training program with phantom attendees. The software licenses for users who didn't exist. But the masterpiece was his Q2 revenue manipulation. He'd accelerated recognition from Q3 contracts, booking future revenue as current income. Technically complex enough that most people wouldn't catch it. Blatantly fraudulent if you understood accounting principles. Which I did. I printed everything. Old school, but necessary. Digital records could be questioned. Claimed as altered. Dismissed as disgruntled employee sabotage. But system logs don't lie. Access timestamps. Change histories. The metadata that Derek didn't even know existed because he'd never bothered to understand the systems he was manipulating. The remote monitoring tool Derek had dismissed as unnecessary oversight when I'd proposed it last year, I'd implemented it anyway, buried in a routine security update. Every time someone accessed the financial systems, it logged their actions, not the changes themselves. That would have been flagged by IT. Just the patterns. Who accessed what, when, for how long. Derek's digital fingerprints were everywhere. 8:23. I laid out printed pages across my desk like tarot cards revealing someone's future, or in this case, their lack of one, revenue inflation, vendor fraud, misallocation of funds, each piece damning on its own. Together, they painted a picture of systematic deception that would make Enron blush. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd fired me for being redundant while sitting on evidence that made him worse than redundant. He was a liability, a cancer in the company's financial structure, metastasizing unchecked because everyone was too impressed by his pedigree to look closely at his work. I cross-referenced everything one more time. Bank records matching suspicious transfers, email trails confirming fictitious meetings, calendar entries for vendor consultations that never happened. The beautiful thing about financial fraud is that it always leaves a trail. Money has to come from somewhere and go somewhere else. It's physics, conservation of mass, except with dollars. My phone buzzed, a text from my son asking if I wanted to grab lunch. Normal life continuing while I sat here holding Derek's professional death warrant. I told him yes, I'd love lunch. Didn't mention I'd be unemployed by then. Because that was the thing Derek never understood about me. He saw a middle-aged woman grateful for her paycheck, too scared to rock the boat. He saw someone who'd been passed over for promotions, ignored in meetings, conditioned to accept less than she deserved. He saw weakness. He didn't see the woman who'd survived a brutal divorce, raised a son alone, and built systems that kept a multi-million-dollar company running. He didn't see someone who'd spent 2 decades learning that nice gets you nowhere, that playing by the rules means losing to those who don't. Most importantly, he didn't see someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. 8:37, I had everything I needed. More than enough. The question now wasn't whether I could destroy Derek Sloan. It was how much of the truth I was willing to unleash. All of it, I decided. Every last damaging detail. 8:43 in the morning. The email that would end Derek Sloan took me less than 5 minutes to compose. Not because I rushed, because I'd been writing it in my head for months. The recipient list was crucial, not just the CEO. Too easy to bury, not HR. They'd follow protocol. Investigate quietly. Allow Derek time to craft explanations. I needed the nuclear option: the entire board of directors, the CFO, the head of legal, and most importantly, Sienna Reed. Sienna, the new chief strategy officer who joined 6 weeks ago with a reputation that made grown executives nervous. Former FBI financial crimes investigator turned corporate reformer. The kind of woman who wore severity like designer armor and had supposedly made her previous company return $10 million in inflated bonuses. Derek had called her unnecessarily aggressive after their first meeting. Perfect. Subject line: Q2 system accuracy versus public report. Clean, professional. The kind of subject that looked routine until you opened it and realized it was a grenade with the pin already pulled. I typed the body of the email. 2 words: check attachments. That was it. No accusations, no emotional pleas, no manifesto about unfair treatment or corporate malfeasance, just an invitation to look at data and draw their own conclusions. Let the numbers tell the story. They were so much more credible than any wronged employee could ever be. The attachments were the key, not files. Too easy to claim they were doctored. Instead, I included a single link to a secure dashboard I'd built in Shadow Vault. Real-time data pulls that couldn't be faked. Live connections to source systems that would show, in devastating clarity, the gap between Derek's fiction and financial reality. But I was smarter than just dumping data. I'd learned from watching whistleblowers crash and burn. They always provided too much, lost the narrative in the noise. I curated 6 specific views. 1 Q2 reported revenue versus actual recognized revenue, a 30% inflation. 2 vendor payment flows highlighting the shell companies, complete with incorporation dates and ownership records. 3 budget allocation changes showing Derek's signature on every suspicious transfer. 4. The original projections I'd created versus Derek's adjusted versions, with changelogs showing who modified what and when. 5. A simple graph of department performance before and after each of Derek's improvements. Spoiler, we were hemorrhaging money. 6. The smoking gun. Email threads where Derek explicitly instructed the finance team to recategorize expenses, to accelerate recognition, to optimize reporting. Each view was locked with 2-factor authentication. Only the recipients could access it, and every access would be logged. If Derek tried to claim I'd fabricated evidence, the system would show he'd never even looked at the real data before making that accusation. I set the dashboard to refresh every 30 seconds. If Derek was in that 9 o'clock board meeting presenting his Q3 projections, the board would be watching his lies update in real time. There was something poetic about that. 8:51. My finger hovered over the send button. Once this went out, there was no taking it back. No maintaining professional relationships, no glowing references, no pretending this was an amicable separation. But then I thought about every woman who'd been gaslit into believing she was too difficult. Every employee who'd watched their work stolen by someone with better connections. Every person who'd been told they were redundant by someone who wouldn't recognize competence if it filed a quarterly report. I thought about my son, who'd watched me come home exhausted and demoralized for 3 years, who'd learned that working hard meant being overlooked while connected incompetence failed upward. I thought about the pension funds invested in our company stock, trusting that the numbers they saw were real. The employees whose bonuses would be cut next quarter when Derek's house of cards finally collapsed on its own. The shareholders being defrauded every time Derek opened his mouth. 8:59. The board meeting would be starting. Derek would be pulling up his slides, straightening his tie, preparing to sell another quarter of carefully crafted lies. I hit send. The email left my outbox with the soft whoosh of a digital arrow finding its target. No recall button, no second thoughts, just the clean satisfaction of truth finally getting its day in court. I leaned back in my chair and waited. Somewhere on the executive floor, phones were about to start buzzing. Laptops would chime with priority messages. Sienna Reed would see my subject line and feel that investigator's instinct kick in. And Derek would be mid-presentation, probably on slide 3 of his 50-slide deck, when he'd notice the CEO's expression change, when the CFO would start typing furiously on her phone, when Sienna would turn her laptop screen toward the head of the board and whisper something that would make the blood drain from Derek's face. Check attachments. 2 words. Everything else would explain itself. 9 o'clock sharp. The board meeting had just begun when Sienna Reed's phone vibrated with my email. I knew because she'd connected to the dashboard at 9:01 and 17 seconds. The access log showed her IP address, her authentication, her methodical progression through each view. She spent 43 seconds on the revenue comparison, 2 minutes on the vendor analysis. When she hit the email trails, she stayed for a full 3 minutes. I imagined her FBI training kicking in, that investigative mind cataloging evidence, building a case. 9:07. The CEO accessed the dashboard, then the CFO, then 3 board members in rapid succession. The real-time user count spiked as executive after executive logged in to see what Sienna was staring at with such intensity. Meanwhile, Derek would be on slide 14 by now. I knew his presentation rhythm, 2 minutes per slide, pause for questions every 5th slide, a practice joke around slide 20 to keep energy up. He had no idea his audience had stopped listening. 9:11. My desk phone rang. HR. I let it go to voicemail. They'd probably just realized I hadn't acknowledged the termination email, hadn't started the exit process. Too late now. That version of the morning script had been shredded the moment I hit send. The dashboard showed something interesting. Someone was trying to access the financial system with Derek's credentials, attempting to modify the Q2 reports. Each attempt was logged, time-stamped, traced. Panic moves. The system blocked him. I'd frozen those datasets an hour ago. Anticipating exactly this reaction, watching him try to doctor evidence while the board watched the real numbers was like seeing someone try to repaint a house while it burned down. 9:15. The activity log showed something beautiful. Sienna had switched from her laptop to the conference room's main display system. She was projecting the dashboard for everyone to see. In that boardroom 30 floors above me, my data was speaking truth to power on a 70-inch screen. I pulled up the meeting room's booking system, a backdoor view I'd discovered months ago. Derek's presentation was scheduled until 10:30, but at 9:18, someone had just booked the adjacent conference room for an emergency financial review. The attendees legal, HR, and security. 9:21. Derek's credentials tried accessing the vendor management system, blocked, then the expense reporting tool, blocked, then his email, probably trying to delete incriminating threads. Too late. The dashboard pulled from archived backups, not live systems. Every panicked move he made just added to the digital trail of guilt. The dashboard user count hit 15, more than just the board now. Word was spreading through the executive floor like wildfire, the kind of spectacle that would become corporate legend, the day a director got caught red-handed in front of the entire board. 9:26. A new access logged in Richard Steinberg, head of legal. He navigated straight to the vendor fraud section, spent 6 minutes reviewing the shell company documentation. Then he switched to the email trails. Even through the impersonal interface of access logs, I could feel his lawyer mind calculating liability, assessing damage, preparing for the legal storm ahead. My personal phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. 14 people had viewed my profile in the last 10 minutes. The corporate gossip network was faster than fiber optic cable. They knew something was happening, even if they didn't know what. 9:32. The CFO was simultaneously logged into the dashboard and the company's banking portal, cross-referencing my data with actual bank records, finding every claim validated, every number confirmed. The beautiful thing about financial systems is they never forget. Every transaction leaves fossils in the digital bedrock. Derek's presentation should have been hitting its stride now, the part where he'd outline Q3's aggressive targets, promise even better margins, paint a picture of growth that justified his bonus, his position, his existence in that room. Instead, the access logs showed chaos, multiple executives jumping between views, legal downloading everything, the CEO's session showing rapid clicks between the revenue manipulation and the email evidence. Someone, I'm guessing Sienna, had enabled screen recording on the dashboard. They were documenting everything. 9:34. The activity pattern changed. The frantic clicking stopped. Access logs showed sessions idle but still connected. In that boardroom, they'd stopped analyzing and started deciding. Derek would be standing at the front of the room, his slides still glowing behind him, watching his audience have a silent conversation with their eyes. This was the moment, the one where corporate calculation met undeniable evidence, where relationships and politics crashed into fraud and liability, where Derek Sloan discovered that an MBA and a firm handshake couldn't override mathematical proof of embezzlement. The conference room booking system updated. Derek's presentation slot had just been terminated early. The emergency financial review in the adjacent room extended indefinitely. 9:37. Security's access badge system showed movement. 2 security guards had just badged into the executive floor. Standard protocol for a termination with potential criminal implications. They'd be positioning themselves outside the boardroom, waiting for the signal. Derek Sloan was about to learn what redundant really meant. 9:34. The access logs went quiet for exactly 3 minutes. In that boardroom, someone had finally spoken the words aloud. Derek, can you explain this? I knew because at 9:37, Derek's credentials attempted emergency access to Shadow Vault itself. The man who dismissed my systems as overly complex was suddenly very interested in understanding them. Each failed login attempt painted a picture of escalating desperation. Wrong password. Wrong password. Account locked after 3 attempts. 9:41. The dashboard showed a new type of activity. Someone was screenshotting specific email threads where Derek had written, "Adjust the projection models and reallocate per our discussion. Corporate speak for fraud. Now preserved in legal's evidence folder." Then the CEO's session navigated to one particular email. I knew which one. The smoking gun where Derek explicitly told accounting to book the Henderson contract in Q2 for optics. We'll deliver in Q3. Securities fraud in writing. The kind of evidence that makes prosecutors salivate. 9:45. My desk phone rang again. This time, the display showed the boardroom conference line. I let it ring. Whatever Derek wanted to say. Whatever excuse or threat or plea he'd crafted, I had no interest in hearing. The numbers had said everything necessary. The badge access system showed movement. Derek's executive assistant had just left the floor. Taking the elevator straight to the parking garage. Rats and sinking ships. She knew what was coming. 9:48. The dashboard sessions began timing out one by one as board members closed their laptops. Decision made. In the adjacent conference room, legal and HR would be drafting the immediate termination paperwork, calculating liability, preparing statements. But Derek was still trying. The system log showed his assistant's credentials attempting to access his files. He must have called her, begged her to delete something, anything, but I'd thought of that too. All executive file access had been restricted the moment my email sent. It would have gotten an automated security alert. Standard protocol for potential data theft. Derek was trying to destroy evidence while security was already watching. 9:52. A new email hit my inbox. Not from Derek, from Sienna Reed. Subject line: Dashboard access request. Forensic review. The body was brief. Ms. Grant, please maintain all system access and documentation. Legal requires preservation of evidence. Do not delete anything. S. Reed. The subtext was clear. This wasn't ending with just termination. They were building a criminal case. 9:56. The building's security camera feeds, another system I'd gained access to during a routine security review, showed 2 guards positioned outside the main boardroom. Inside, through the glass walls, I could see Derek still standing at the presentation podium, but his audience wasn't looking at him anymore. They were looking at their phones, their laptops, having sidebar conversations. The CEO stood up. Even from the grainy security feed, his body language screamed controlled fury. He said something to Derek, short, direct. Derek's response was longer, animated. His hands moved in emphasis. The universal gesture of someone trying to explain the unexplainable. 9:59. Sienna Reed opened her laptop again, her session reactivating on the dashboard. She navigated to a view I'd embedded but hadn't highlighted. The audit trail showing every time Derek had accessed financial systems after hours. Always the night before board presentations. Pattern of behavior, premeditation. She typed something in the notes field of the dashboard. How long have you known? I responded through the system's comment function, 6 months certain, 2 years suspected. Her next note, why now? I typed back, he made me redundant at 7:47 this morning. There was a pause, then, his mistake. 10:02. The security feed showed the CEO raising his hand, cutting off whatever Derek was saying. The room fell still. Even through the pixelated image, I could see Derek's shoulders drop, the moment he realized his words had become worthless, that no amount of Harvard-polished explanations could counteract mathematical proof. The CEO spoke again, 5 words, based on the movement of his lips, the same 5 words he'd used on others, probably with the same dismissive efficiency. Derek's hands dropped to his sides. His laptop, still connected to the presentation system, went dark. Someone had remotely terminated his access. His company phone would be dead already. His email, frozen. His badge, deactivated. 10:03. The security guards entered the boardroom. Professional, discreet. They didn't touch Derek, just positioned themselves in a way that made the next steps crystal clear. Derek Sloan, the man who'd called me redundant 12 hours ago, was being escorted from the building like a common criminal, which, based on the evidence still glowing on boardroom screens, is exactly what he was. The dashboard user count spiked one final time as the entire board logged back in, probably to review specific evidence with legal, building their case, calculating damages, preparing for the audit that would unravel 2 years of carefully crafted deception. Derek had been erased from the system more efficiently than I ever was. The difference, I was terminated by email. He was terminated by mathematics. 10:03. The boardroom door opened and Derek Sloan walked out flanked by security. Through the security feed, I watched him move like a man underwater. Slow, disoriented, struggling against a current he couldn't see. His perfect presentation was still queued up on the screen behind him. Slide 14 frozen in digital amber, accelerating growth through strategic innovation. The elevator arrived immediately. Executive floor privilege, even for the condemned. As the doors closed, I switched camera feeds to track his descent. 30 floors of silence. 30 floors to process how 2 words, check attachments, had dismantled 2 years of fraud in under 60 minutes. 10:07, my computer chimed. An automated HR notification. Derek Sloan has been removed from all system access privileges, the corporate equivalent of an obituary. Then another email, this time from CEO Richard Hatfield himself. No subject line. The body simply read, "Do not leave the building, RH." Not a request, an order, but for the first time in 3 years. I didn't feel the automatic compliance reflex. I was already redundant. Remember, what were they going to do? Fire me again. 10:12. The security feed showed Derek in the lobby, still flanked by guards. They weren't letting him return to his office. Standard protocol. When executives fall, they fall fast and complete. No chance to destroy evidence, recruit allies, or poison wells on the way out. He was handed a banker's box, his personal items, already packed. Someone, probably his shell-shocked assistant, had been sent to clear his desk while he was still in the boardroom trying to explain away federal crimes. The corporate walk of shame reduced to its essence a middle-aged man in a $2,000 suit carrying a cardboard box through a marble lobby. 10:15. The badge access system logged his final exit. Derek Sloan's 16-month tenure at Catalytic Systems officially ended at 10:15 and 32 seconds on a Monday morning. By lunch, his parking spot would be reassigned. By close of business, his email would bounce back with user unknown. By tomorrow, it would be like he never existed. Except for the forensic audit that would spend months unraveling his damage. Except for the criminal investigation that would follow. Except for the investors who'd been defrauded, and the employees whose bonuses had been stolen to fund his fictional success. 10:18, another email appeared. Sienna Reed again. Conference room 12B, 15 minutes. Please bring all documentation, SR. The please was interesting. First sign of courtesy I'd seen all morning. Then again, Sienna Reed didn't need to be rude. When you could end careers with spreadsheets, politeness was just professional seasoning. 10:21, I started my own packing. Not much. 15 years had taught me to keep personal items minimal. A photo of my son, a coffee mug he'd made in 3rd grade, a small cactus that had somehow survived 5 office moves and 3 reorganizations. The rest was just corporate detritus. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Derek just called. Says you set him up. Destroyed his career. That true? Brad S. Brad Stevenson, Derek's golf buddy from the country club. The same Brad who'd gotten Derek the interview here. Who'd vouched for his character. Who'd probably be fielding calls all day from confused executives wondering how their golden boy had turned out to be fool's gold. I typed back, I didn't destroy his career, math did. Then I blocked the number. Derek could find another character witness for his fraud trial. 10:24. The elevator ride to the 12th floor felt different without the weight of employment. My badge still worked. HR inefficiency in my favor for once. But I wasn't an employee anymore. I was something else now. Evidence, witness, the woman who'd brought down a director with an email shorter than a fortune cookie. The dashboard access logs showed continued activity. 23 users now, including names I recognized from internal audit, external compliance, and what looked like the entire legal department. They were dissecting Derek's fraud like medical students around a cadaver, learning how deep the rot went. 10:29. Outside conference room 12B. I paused. Through the glass, I could see Sienna Reed setting up her laptop. Richard Hatfield on a conference call. Two people from legal comparing notes. The power players. The ones who'd decide what happened next. 3 hours ago, I'd been nobody. A redundant analyst drinking her third coffee and reviewing someone else's lies. Now I was the most important person in the building. The keeper of receipts. The woman who knew where all the bodies were buried because I'd helped dig the graves. "You are finished here," the CEO had told Derek. 5 words that meant more than termination. They meant disgrace, criminal charges, professional exile, the kind of ending that made people Google your name before dinner parties to make sure you weren't invited. 10:31. I knocked on the conference room door. Sienna looked up, nodded, gestured to a chair across from her, the same chair where Derek had probably pitched his lies 6 months ago, selling himself as the future of strategic innovation. Now it was my turn to tell the truth. And unlike Derek, I had the numbers to back it up. I sat in my car in the Target parking lot, engine off, watching suburban life flow around me, mothers pushing carts full of groceries, teenagers loitering near the entrance, normal people living normal lives, unaware that 3 miles away, a corporate empire had just shifted on its axis. My phone sat silent on the passenger seat. No more emails, no more calls, no more pretending to care about metrics and deliverables and synergies. The meeting with Sienna had been brief. They wanted me as a consultant for the forensic audit, full access, contractor rates, my own terms. I declined. "We need your expertise," Sienna had said, that sharp mind already calculating how to clean up Derek's mess. "You have everything you need in the dashboard," I'd replied. The CEO had offered more money, a better title, the kind of vindication package they give to whistleblowers when the lawyers start calculating liability. I declined that too. They didn't understand. This was never about money or titles or corner offices. It was about the moment when someone thinks you're powerless and discovers they're wrong. It was about Derek's face when he realized his stolen kingdom was built on digital sand. It was about proving that competence matters more than connections, that truth weighs more than charm. My phone buzzed. LinkedIn notification. Connection request from Sienna Reed with a note. "We owe you lunch." Maybe someday, when the audits were done and the lawsuit settled and Derek's name had become a cautionary tale told at business schools, when enough time had passed that we could laugh about the Monday morning a middle-aged analyst destroyed a director with 13 words. Another buzz, a text from my son. "Mom, you still free for lunch? That new Thai place." I smiled. "On my way." One final notification, an email from CEO Richard Hatfield. The subject line read, "Standing offer." I didn't open it. Whatever they wanted, my testimony, my systems, my silence, they could wait. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't on their schedule. I reached for my phone settings and found my company email account. Catalytic Systems. 15 years reduced to a configuration profile. My thumb hovered over the delete button. All those messages, all those late-night reports, all those stolen victories with Derek's name attached. I pressed delete. The profile vanished. 15 years of digital chains, gone. The afternoon sun hit my windshield at just the right angle, turning the suburban parking lot into something almost beautiful. I sat there for a moment, feeling the weight of nothing. No deadlines, no presentations, no pretending someone else's mediocrity deserved my excellence. A minivan pulled into the spot next to me. A woman got out, looking frazzled, checking her phone while juggling shopping bags. The uniform of working motherhood. I recognized the look, the constant calculation of time versus tasks, the mental load that never stopped. 6 months ago, that was me, racing through errands between meetings, optimizing every minute. Now I had time to have lunch with my son, time to figure out what came next, time to build something that belonged to me, not to men who thought redundant was a word you could attach to human beings like a clearance tag. I started the car. The radio came on. Some morning show still dissecting last night's game. Normal noise for a normal Monday. Except nothing about this day had been normal. Somewhere across town, forensic accountants were combing through Derek's digital entrails. Lawyers were drafting statements. Board members were calculating exactly how fucked they were. And Derek was probably sitting in his luxury car in some other parking lot, making desperate phone calls to lawyers who weren't answering, refreshing his email to find only silence, learning what redundant really felt like. I pulled out of the parking space, leaving catalytic systems in my rearview mirror, literally and figuratively. My son was waiting. Thai food sounded perfect, and for the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how quickly I needed to eat to get back to the office. "Check attachments," I said out loud, laughing at the absurdity of it all. 2 words that had ended a career and freed another. For the first time in years, I wasn't hoping to be saved. I just was. The sun was shining, my son was waiting, and somewhere in a boardroom, executives were still staring at my dashboard, understanding that the most dangerous person in any organization isn't the one with the biggest title. It's the one who knows where you buried your bodies and kept the receipts. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge. Where are you listening from? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of workplace justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, and share your own experiences with toxic bosses. We've all got them. Hit that notification bell to catch the next story of someone who refused to be silenced.